Hey, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to fix an oil leak that's coming from your lifter lever or clutch actuating arm. So right here in front of me I have a 2004 CR250R, and this thing was leaking oil overnight. So after some simple diagnostics, we found that the oil leak was coming from the clutch actuating arm. So we're going to go ahead and replace that seal. We'll show you how to do it, and this process, it's going to be similar for a lot of different dirt bikes and even some ATVs. To do this job, you'll need some common hand tools. We actually need to pull the flywheel on ours, so we're using the Tusk clutch holding tool. We've got a flywheel puller and also a torque wrench. Always refer to your model specific service manual for more information, proper procedures, and specs. For parts, all we have is this oil seal. This is the OEM seal. You can find this under the OEM diagrams on our website. Like I mentioned earlier, most bikes you're not going to have to pull the flywheel or the stator, but on this one, since we do, we'll start by disconnecting our stator. All right, with our stator wires disconnected, what we'll do, we'll remove this wire retainer right here out of the way, and then we'll pull this wire that goes up to our harness and just set it aside. Then we can take an 8mm T-handle and we'll loosen all these bolts on our stator cover. And we'll just remove this cover. And you can see on the bottom of this, there should never be oil under this cover on this particular bike, along with a lot of the two-strokes that have the actuating arm on the left side of the engine. So if you do have transmission oil in there, then you know this actuator arm seal is bad. However, on the bikes that have an external actuating arm, there will obviously be oil underneath the engine covers, but that shouldn't matter since you can usually inspect and replace that seal without removing any of the covers. So I'm going to wipe up some of this oil that we have on our crankcase haft right here. And then this is our clutch actuating arm or lifter arm, whichever you want to call it. So we need to disconnect that from our cable. We have the Magura hydraulic clutch installed on this, so we just need to remove this right here and disconnect it. We'll get this out of the way for now. So another thing that can happen, these arms, they can wear out. It's not very common, but it can happen. And same thing with these bearings, they can go bad. So if you have a ton of play with them rocking back and forth, then you're gonna wanna take care of that. But ours actually fits in there pretty tight, so we're actually just gonna replace that seal. So the next thing we need to do is remove this flywheel. To do that, we're using the Tusk clutch holding tool. It doubles as a flywheel holder. So we'll just take these two tabs and we'll line them up in the flywheel, tighten that down. Then we'll use our socket to remove the nut. And don't forget to remove the washer from behind that nut. Now we're ready for the flywheel puller. And before we put it in, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on these threads just to help everything go smooth. And these are actually left-hand threads on this puller, so we'll go ahead and screw this into place. So with our puller in place, what we'll do, this centered bolt is actually what's going to be pulling everything out. And this is just pressing against the crankshaft right there. So we'll hold this tool into place and tighten the center bolt down until the flywheel pops off. And that didn't take very much force at all. You can see it kind of popped already. Just pull that off. Make sure the woodruff key stays in place. Either that or you can remove it. So these two-stroke stators, a lot of them are adjustable, and some of them will have 3 marks right here or 2 marks, and then there's a little pointer in the crankcase. So you can change your ignition timing with that. You just want to make sure that you mark or make a note of where it originally was and put it back into the same position. So to remove this, what I'm going to do, there's two 10mm head bolts, and I'll just remove those and then remove the stator. Now, before I take the stator out, the reason why we're doing this is this tab right here on this mounting bracket is actually what's holding this arm into place. Most of the bikes aren't like this. Usually you'll have a bolt running up through here or some kind of bracket that specifically holds just this piece in place. So depending what style you have, just follow the instructions in the service manual, but all the rest of the procedures should be similar to what we're doing here. So we'll go ahead and remove the stator. And then we've got a bunch of sand stuck in here, and I kind of want to wipe the area before we actually pull this out, just so I don't get any sand trapped down in there. And now we can pull this out. Okay, so to remove this seal, it's not going to be in there very tight. I'm just going to use a screwdriver and a rag, and the seal is going to pop right out. When you take this out, note the direction that it's in there. So this side that faces the outside of the engine, the flat part facing out, and then the side that goes in towards the oil has the recessed part on the seal. Now I'm going to go ahead and wipe that out where the seal was sitting, just to make sure everything's clean. Okay, now I'm going to take our new seal and I'm going to apply some grease to that seal lip right there, but I'm also going to put a little bit on this outside too. And that way when I install it, it's just going to help it slide into place a little bit easier. And for ours, we can just push this in by hand. If you need to, you might need to use a socket that's the same outside diameter and press it into place. Now I'm going to take the actuating arm and I'm going to clean it off really well. And then we'll check it for any wear where it rides on the seal and on the bearings. It's also a good idea to inspect the actuator arm where it contacts the push rod. This contact area needs to be in good condition for proper clutch disengagement and can make a big difference in the feel of the clutch. What you're looking for here is to make sure the corner is not rounded off or worn down. Chances are, if the actuating arm is worn down, your push rod is going to be worn out too and will also need to be replaced. We do have a how-to video that explains these parts and inspections in detail. I'm going to put a thin film of grease on this as we slide it into place. Now we'll take our stator, we'll slide this back into place. And then to make sure this thing's centered on here, I like to rock it back and forth and make sure that we're pivoting where it's supposed to. After that, we'll take our two bolts that we previously removed and we'll get them so they're almost tight, but to where we can still move the stator. So I'm going to align this right back where we had it before, and then I'm going to snug these bolts down. And then after I've double checked that, I'll go ahead and torque these to spec. The next thing we need to do is install the flywheel. So to do that, we need to make sure our Woodruff key is still in place, which ours is, and then we'll just align the notch with the key. Keep in mind this thing's magnetized, so it might want to suck into place. Now we can install the washer and our nut, and then we'll torque this down to spec. Okay, now with that torque down, we'll take our clutch cable, or in our case, the slave cylinder for this hydraulic clutch, and we'll reinstall it onto the actuator arm. After that, we can reinstall this cover, and don't forget to put the gasket on behind it. Now we can reroute the stator wiring to the wiring harness. So we'll go ahead, we'll bend this tab over that holds it in place. And then at this point, it's a good idea to use a little bit of dielectric grease on this 4-pin harness. So now that we have the dielectric grease in place, we'll go ahead and snap our electrical connectors together. The last thing we need to do is double check the level of our transmission oil. And that's it. That's all there is to fixing this problem. It's really simple. If you need this part, check out our OEM diagrams on our website. We also have a ton of other things you need for your bike, so check that out. And if you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a ton of other helpful videos on there. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.